Some historical occasions don't draw much attention to themselves. They come silently, almost without notice, and you don't completely get what you were seeing until you look back on it. This is one of those times. For the British monarchy, what is happening on both sides of the Atlantic right now is nothing less than a turning point. It is a reset, a reclamation, a declaration of intent so strong, so well-timed, so painstakingly carried out that anyone who spent the previous few years dismissing the royal family as a collapsing institution on the verge of irrelevance now has a very difficult question to respond to. Were they mistaken? Increasingly, the answer is yes. Because the British royal family has produced 3 distinct instances in only 48 hours that have drastically altered the discourse. After addressing the U.S. Congress, King Charles III stood in the White House's East Room and gave one of the most charming, beguiling, and politically shrewd speeches at a state supper in recent memory. The Prince and Princess of Wales then unveiled a gorgeous new family photo to commemorate 15 years of marriage, almost as if the timing had been orchestrated by an unseen hand. A picture that stopped people mid-scroll and made them feel something because it was so cozy, organic, and profoundly human. It's not a coincidence. That is a monarchy that has mastered the art of retaliation without using any force. Let's start with King Charles because his actions on this state visit to the United States need a thorough analysis. Not just as a diplomatic ploy or a bit of royal pomp, but as a masterclass in how a king functions when he is at last allowed to be himself. The public had been denied this for months. The king had to go into a period of somewhat quiet because of health issues. There were worries. There was conjecture. In private, some were questioning the institution's ability to withstand another storm. All of it was addressed by the arrival of this vacation. By all accounts, Charles's physicians had been working very hard to make sure the king was physically ready for the rigors of this voyage. And the outcomes have been remarkable. The man who came to Washington exuded a vitality and presence that drowned out any hesitation. He didn't only make it through this journey. He flourished. He was in charge of rooms. He disarmed audiences. He spoke jokes with the accuracy of someone who has spent a lifetime honing his craft. Above all, he reminded the world that a well-executed monarchy is a force rather than only a symbol. The high-wire performance of the visit was always going to be the speech to Congress. It is not insignificant to stand in front of the combined houses of the U.S. legislature in a room that has seen some of the most influential addresses in contemporary history and to deliver a speech that ties together friendship, diplomacy, history, and political reality. Additionally, the reception was outstanding. There were people standing on both sides of the aisle. Both Democrats and Republicans stood up in a city so divided and politicized that it seems no longer possible to reach a bipartisan consensus on the color of the sky. Later that night, Donald Trump remarked he couldn't believe it. He said that he was unable to persuade the Democrats to stand as the king had. He claimed that they were more fond of Charles than they had ever been of any Democrat or Republican. Naturally, there was humor in that comment, but it also had a sincere quality. A realization that Charles had accomplished something extraordinary in that room. However, it was the state dinner speech that exposed to the world the man behind the throne and disclosed something more profound and intimate. For all its significance, the speech in Congress was essentially a ceremonial exercise. It had to have policy weight. It needed to be like a statesman. It had to function within the precise and extremely cautious bounds of what a constitutional monarch can and cannot say in the legislature of a foreign nation, especially during a period of high diplomatic strain. Additionally, it leaned too much towards such limitations in the eyes of many onlookers. It was accurate. It was right. However, it might have been a bit too cautious. The state supper was a very different experience. King Charles seemed to exhale by the time he stood up in the White House's East Room, surrounded by some of the world's most influential and well-known personalities. And the results were remarkable. The humor was real, impromptu, and expertly timed. The historical allusions were lively with personality rather than dull and scholarly. The recent security issue involving those in attendance was acknowledged with just the proper amount of warmth and gravity. The entire event was transformed into something that will be remembered for years because of the gift. A bell. Not just any bell, the original bell from HMS Trump, a British submarine's conning tower. a submarine that fought valiantly in the Pacific during World War II and, by historical coincidence, shared the same name as the guy seated across the table. It was given as a personal gift by King Charles. With a line that the entire crowd adored, he leaned into the moment. He claimed the president could just give them a ring if he ever needed to travel to the United Kingdom. Donald Trump got to his feet. He was clearly moved. He extended his hand. The room exploded. And in that one instant, all political differences between the two countries, as well as their declared stances on trade, Iran, and other issues that currently plague the transatlantic relationship, vanished. Not formally, not permanently, but emotionally, humanly. And sometimes that's the most important thing. Moments like that, rather than policy statements, can sometimes keep international ties intact. By a king who understood the man he was seated with, had done his research, and had discovered the one gesture that would land flawlessly. Charles's handling of the entire visit is worth considering since it demonstrates a trait that is difficult to fake and easy to undervalue. Emotional intelligence. The ability to read a room, recognize what is needed at a given time, and offer it without appearing forced. After the recent security issue, Charles honored Melania Trump at the beginning of the state dinner speech. He addressed her bravery and poise immediately. He appreciated her experiences in front of the global media. Here was a king stepping up and providing dignity and respect in a wider context where public personalities of all stripes had been making fun of her and where late-night television had found amusement in extremely personal and terrifying circumstances. It has nothing to do with politics. It was a human one. And that is a skill as well. The capacity to identify the moments that speak to something genuine and break through the clutter. Trump's address at the dinner was heated and erratic as usual. He congratulated the king on his speech to Congress. He described Windsor Castle as the most remarkable architecture he had ever seen, a structure so long it seemed to go on forever, recalling his visit there the previous fall. He recounted asking the king if William the Conqueror, who constructed it in 1070, had been a good man. And he tended to doubt it, according to the king's curt remark. That exchange has a strangely touching quality. The absurdity of history unites two very different individuals from very different worlds. And it's important, because the personal relationship is frequently what keeps things together when everything else fails in diplomacy, just like in everything else. Let's now discuss the opposing viewpoint. Because without discussing what was going on in California 3,500 miles away at the same time, no narrative of this point in royal history would be complete. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry did not attend the king's speech. At least that's what several journalists have been informed by people close to the pair. The pair reportedly didn't watch the congressional address. Not live, not afterward, and not at all. According to an insider, Harry and Meghan's separation from the rest of the royal family is now real rather than symbolic. Another claimed that everything had entirely collapsed, with no calls, texts, outreach, or back channel. That any shaky progress that had been made had completely crumbled, hastened by a recent trip abroad that seemed to solidify stances on both sides. According to sources, Harry and Meghan don't think they need the family's blessing, the palace's protection, or the king's approval to proceed. That they have finished looking back. Let's now appropriately address this. Because there's more to this than a contemptuous eye roll. Even so, the eye roll makes perfect sense. Whether these claims are true or not is not the most crucial item to consider. It's that they even exist. They received a briefing. Someone picked up the phone and informed a reporter that Harry and Meghan wanted everyone to know that they had not watched the speech. Consider what you can learn from that. You wouldn't brief journalists about it if you really didn't care, if you had truly moved on, and if the relationship was so completely finished that you had no interest in what was going on in Washington. There would be nothing to say, so you would just watch and remain silent. Everything you need to know about Harry and Meghan's true emotional state is revealed by the fact that they felt compelled to share their thoughts with the outside world. We've grown very accustomed to this routine. They always claim to be completely independent and emotionally detached and to have gotten past all of this to the point that it no longer affects them. And the evidence of its opposite is always present, silently beneath it. The knowledge of each headline. The response to every slight is the insistent and almost uncontrolled urge to assert that they don't require any of it, even while doing so demonstrates that they do. Although that is an honest observation, it is uncomfortable. Now for the contrast. Because in this case, contrast is crucial. William and Catherine issued a single photo while all of this was being briefed and counterbriefed on the other side of the Atlantic. Only a little caption commemorating their 15th wedding anniversary was included. No in-depth justification, no discussion of storylines, no answer to detractors or pundits, or the never-ending stream of conjecture that has surrounded the family for years. Just a picture, and what a picture! It was photographed by a photographer who is genuinely close to the family and has been around long enough for the kids, George, Charlotte, and Louis, to consider the camera's presence to be nothing out of the ordinary. As a result, the image appears to have been taken from real life rather than being created for public viewing. The kids are at ease in the same way as they are when they aren't asked to perform. In the middle of the picture, Catherine, who has experienced more in the last 2 years than most people will ever fully comprehend, appears content. There are dogs, laughing in the body language, and a sense of unity among the family. Not bravely joyful, not performatively happy. Really, really, really happy. This is more significant than it may appear since Catherine's decision to keep sharing these moments with the public in the wake of the Mother's Day photo controversy, months of conjecture on her health, and her return to public life are not insignificant. Some others were genuinely concerned that she might just retreat. She may decide to completely close that door as a result of the experience of having her private life turned into public property in such an intrusive and harmful manner. It's not closed by her. Through that, she has shared something genuine and kept it open. And it makes perfect sense that the public has reacted with relief and love. To put it simply, the timing of the photo's release was also ideal. It came during a week that was dominated by the King's official visit. It reaffirmed the message of perseverance, resilience, and a family that is thriving rather than merely surviving. Every narrative about instability, division, or decline was addressed, although indirectly. Look at us. We are here. We are well. We are together. And we are the future. This was further supported by William's attendance in other places throughout the same week. In photos taken at an RAF site, the Prince of Wales appeared not only purposeful and fit, but also at ease in his position. William now exudes a certain ease that wasn't always present. The years of planning, observing, and learning how to bear the massive burden of what he will eventually inherit have paid off. A man who exudes power, looks like a king in waiting, and exudes the kind of steady, dependable, forward-thinking confidence that an institution needs from its future. This is not insignificant. In actuality, it is everything right now. For the past few years, the question of what will happen next has been one of the monarchy's secret concerns. No matter how valiantly and skillfully King Charles dealt with his health issues, the populace will always look to the future. And when they look, William is what they see. And Catherine, next to William. And next to them, 3 kids are receiving the most precious gift of all. A truly typical upbringing with a truly loving family before the world starts to expect more of them. The age distribution of the people in the official photo of the working royals that was made public earlier this week has drawn some criticism. Although it might have been a little unfair, it was a reasonable comment. Institutions have a history. However, that worry was allayed by the picture of William and Catherine with their kids. Nothing about it is outdated. It's not tense, formal, or obligatory. It is full of warmth, individuality, and the unique, priceless vitality of young children who have no interest in or knowledge of the weight of history that they are being asked to start carrying gradually and softly. The way William and Catherine are raising their family and presenting it to the public is infused with a philosophy that is worth clearly expressing since it is a sincere and deliberate break from the past. For many years, royal children were presented to the public in elaborately staged environments, formal photos taken against impressive backdrops, and appearances at formal gatherings where conduct and look were meticulously controlled. The children were visible to the public, but they were always seen through a lens of obligation and formality, which, while appropriate in some situations, also produced a sense of distance and gave the impression that the children's lives were spent in glass. Cases, viewed but not really understood. William and Catherine have discovered an alternative strategy. They aggressively shield their kids from the constant scrutiny that might warp and harm a child's development. However, they have sincere times together when they are protected. The images that have surfaced over time are not tableau poses. They are birthday mornings and afternoons spent in gardens and on beaches, as well as family vacations. They are kids who appear to be kids. Additionally, it is gradual, intentional, and obviously calibrated to be something they can develop into rather than something that is forced upon them as the older two start to appear in more public situations. George seems to be growing into a young man of quiet seriousness and poise, bearing the unique and incredible weight of knowing what is ahead. Charlotte, who as part of her father's easy confidence and her mother's eyes, has started to represent the family in public events and athletic events with a remarkable elegance for her age. Louis is still the youngest and is still mostly hidden from the public. He is occasionally seen in the happy, carefree moments that belong to young children who have not yet learned to perform. As well as the dogs. In a tiny manner, the dogs in the picture have taken on symbolic meaning. Although dogs in royal photos are not novel, their inclusion here speaks to the project as a whole. With a puppy, a garden, and 15 years of marriage under their belt, this family is asking you to trust them with what comes next. They want you to see them as a family, not simply as an institution or a line of succession. Have faith. In the end, this is all about that. The monarchy's currency is trust. Without it, everything is just ceremonial. Without it, the rich history of royal custom, the palaces, and the etiquette all become only an expensive setting for a meaningless tale. Trust is earned over time, shown by consistency, and proven by the subtle accumulation of moments that build up to a picture of dependability and genuineness rather than by one big gesture. In a specific and methodical manner, King Charles has been establishing that trust. His work on environmental concerns predates his reign, and although it has occasionally provoked discussion and criticism, it has also established him as a man of genuine passion rather than a figurehead happy to merely wave and grin. His approach to managing his personal health issues, which is marked by openness and an unwillingness to vanish, has garnered a lot of respect and sympathy from the people. His ability to be warm, as he repeatedly displayed during the state visit, speaks to someone who actually connects with those around him rather than acting as though they are at a distance. And William has been seeing all of this, taking lessons from it, and incorporating what is uniquely his own. A directness, an informality, and a readiness to appear in situations that would never have pleased earlier royal generations. The friendship he has formed with people across very different worlds, the causes he has championed, and the way he has allowed the public to witness, progressively and on his own terms, the kind of man he is becoming. As is typically the case with monarchs, this is a long game. There are generational timescales. The work is measured in decades rather than news cycles. And the family that is playing this lengthy game seems to be doing better than virtually anyone anticipated right now, in this specific week, at this specific moment. There is no need to emphasize the contrast between Harry and Meghan. It is visible, it exists, and it speaks for itself. However, it is important to consider what the contrast actually shows, as it is not just a question of duty against freedom, loyalty versus betrayal, or institution versus independence. It's a more basic issue. What you do with your tail is the question. Over the past few years, Harry and Meghan's story has taken center stage. A documentary series, a biography, a number of interviews, and an ongoing stream of briefings, statements, and reactions have all focused on their complaints, experiences, emotions, and viewpoint on all that happened to them. There has been a great deal of effort put into conveying that story, and it has resulted in considerable media coverage, as well as a lingering and growing sense of resentment that has not seemed to go away across time or space. William and Catherine have done nearly the exact opposite. They have faced their own challenges, struggles, health issues, and stressful times, but they haven't created a public architecture around any of it. They haven't made their personal suffering public. Rather, they have quietly carried on, shown up, and completed the task. And when they have revealed something about their inner life, it has always taken the exact shape shown in this anniversary photo. It is genuine, kind, and freely given rather than purposefully. The public is able to distinguish between the two. Eventually, it always can. As of right now, King Charles is still in America. There will be more. There will be more meetings, interactions, and events that will be spoken about, analyzed, and contributed to the ongoing narrative of the significance of this trip. Even though there is still more to come, it has already been deemed a success by all realistic standards. It was a real, significant, and historically significant success rather than a qualifying or conditional one. The visit's diplomatic goal, which was always to strengthen the transatlantic partnership during a particularly difficult and uncertain time, has been accomplished. Regardless of any differences in their worldviews or political perspectives, the personal chemistry between the king and the American president has been vividly and clearly shown. Despite the current tension, it has been eloquently and emotionally said that Britain and America are nations united by something more profound than policy, something anchored in history, shared values, and a long history of standing together when it counted most. Beyond the diplomacy, though, this visit has accomplished something else that might be even more significant in the long run. The world has been reminded of the true essence of the British monarchy. It is a living institution carried by actual people who have dedicated their lives to it. It is not a relic, a museum piece, or an anachronism that struggles to justify its existence in a modern world. It still has the ability to move people, inspire affection, and represent something that goes beyond the routine business of politics and power. A king who can bring a president to his feet with a gift so well chosen it almost seems like a miracle of intuition, who can make both sides of the American Congress stand up and applaud, and who can stand in the most powerful building on earth and speak about friendship, history, and our common humanity with a grace and wit that warms the room. That is not insignificant. That really is a significant amount. Then, at home, in a picture taken during a family vacation in Cornwall, a young family strolls through a field with their dogs. A mother and father who have experienced a great deal together gaze at each other and their kids, and something very basic and very human happens between them. A peaceful moment of everyday joy shared with the world. That is the monarchy's future. It is arguing that, not in speeches, not in lofty declarations, nor in any official proclamation of direction or goal, just in the proof that a family has been doing what they do and doing it well for 2 generations. This week has dealt a serious blow to the long-running narrative of an institution on the verge of irrelevance, crumbling under the weight of internal strife and outside criticism. It might get better. These things have a tendency to cycle. As is often the case, there will be challenging times ahead. However, the story being written at this precise moment is a different one. The Crown has retaliated in a stealthy, self-assured, and destructive manner. It tells you everything that someone in California, 3,500 miles away, decided the world needed to know they didn't watch.